Grab your mug and get comfortable, because what I'm about to share isn't just another headline or a wild TV drama. It's the kind of story that grabs you by the collar and doesn't let go, starting with a missing grandmother and ending somewhere you never saw coming. This actually happened, and honestly, reality's far messier and stranger than anything a writer could dream up. So maybe you've heard her name, Nancy Guthrie, 84, Tucson, Arizona. Mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, she vanished the night of January 31st, 2026, and since then the country's been stuck in this weird state, holding its breath and checking the news, waiting for something. Anything. Here's this sweet, elderly woman with a pacemaker, living in her own house, and then gone. All anyone saw was her garage door closing around 9:50 at night. After that, just nothing. Her pacemaker stopped sending a signal in the early hours of the morning. A little blood, both inside and out, but not much. No sign of a break-in, nothing stolen, no robbery, no big dramatic crime scene. Just an ordinary house. Minus Nancy. People started connecting the dots back to Savannah. It's not hard to see why, right? Maybe someone had it out for her. Maybe a stalker. A message to Savannah. It felt like the kind of awful story that, unfortunately, made sense. But then the story veered straight off the map. 5 days after Nancy vanished, an unmarked envelope landed on Savannah's doorstep in New York. No return address, nothing fancy. Inside, there's a photograph. Old, worn at the corners, definitely not recent. It looks like one of those family pictures that never sees the light of day. There's Nancy, but she's younger, probably in her early 50s, with her arm linked through a man nobody in the family recognized. They're standing outside a cozy little cafe somewhere in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Flip it over, and there's a message scrawled on the back. Nobody in the family has a clue who wrote it. She deserved more than secrets. Ask about Elena. Ask about Elena. Savannah wastes no time. It's a group call with her siblings that night. Annie, Cam, they're all staring at that faded photo through the glow of their phones, hoping for one of those sudden aha moments. Who's that guy? Annie mutters. And who's Elena? Cam just shakes his head. Quiet, there's nothing. The photo is dated 1992. That's 3 years after their dad died. Suddenly, the family realizes this isn't just a clue, it's a door. The beginning of a story they never even guessed was part of their lives. Here's the thing, Nancy Guthrie was the foundation, the definition of stability. She called Savannah every week, showed up for church, baked cookies, handed out advice like, "Don't let your head float away, honey. Fame is fleeting." To her grandkids, she was the one who never cracked. Turns out, she'd lived a life none of them saw coming. More than 30 years of secrets buried beneath casseroles, gentle reminders, and faith. When you hear this kind of story, it rattles you. There's the shock, sure, anger, confusion. But then, if you let yourself sit with it, maybe there's something else too. A kind of, well, understanding. A whisper that says, yeah, I get it. Let's rewind for a minute back to where all of this really starts. 1980, that's when Nancy's husband, Charles, died of a heart attack. She was 47, suddenly a widow, 3 teenagers still at home. The house in the Catalina foothills, a steady but unremarkable bookkeeping job, 3 kids who relied on her completely, a busy life, rewritten overnight after tragedy. Neighbors remembered she never once complained. She just kept going. Raised her kids with humor and deep faith, mixed in with the kind of stubborn love that doesn't give up. Savannah's talked about her mom on air, how she dealt with things head-on, zero self-pity, just grit and grace. All of it was true. She was tough. But here's what people forget. If you carry everything all the time, one day you need to set something down. Even just for a weekend, there's always a crack in the armor, somewhere. Nancy's started in Santa Fe. In 1991, 2 years after Charles's death, she signed up for a church retreat in New Mexico. On the outside, she was still the reliable mom, but on the inside, still hurting. Still figuring out how to be a person on her own. And that's where she bumped into Victor Ramirez, a gallery owner and artist, a transplant from Mexico City. He was a little younger, 45, easygoing, open, and passionate about his work. He'd moved to New Mexico years before, running from politics and a loss of his own. His wife had died in a crash. So now, these two, Nancy and Victor, stood together, both scarred and lost, both reinventing themselves under big New Mexico skies. They talked for hours about loss, about art, about what comes next after your life shatters. Something sparked between them. Let's make this clear. Nancy didn't just walk out on her family. She never stopped showing up for her kids, never let go of her responsibilities. But she returned home changed. She'd found something new, something she didn't have words for, not yet. So, like plenty of women her age and generation, she packed those feelings away, deep, maybe too deep to ever show the world. But she still found her way back to Santa Fe every few months. She'd tell the kids she was off to see an old friend or headed on a women's retreat. Then, she'd get behind the wheel, drive 8 hours across the desert, and, for a weekend, she could be someone else entirely. Victor had a name for her, Elena, after a character from an old Mexican novel they both loved, a woman who hid her fire. Nancy took to it, bit by bit. In Santa Fe, Elena came alive. Behind that name, under that New Mexico sun, Nancy Elena let herself open up to a part of life she never thought she'd get to have. And all this time, nobody at home had any idea. This was the side of her life that never made the highlight reel, the memories she never told her children, the secrets nobody asked about. Until now. Nancy wasn't just helping Victor run his gallery, she was stepping into a whole other life. She started showing her own paintings, which she'd never dared to do in Tucson. Back home, art always felt out of reach, like something she didn't deserve, as if making beauty was a reward for someone else. In Santa Fe, Elena, her secret self, danced through late-night fiestas, argued about philosophy over wine, until her laughter echoed and her tears spilled freely. She allowed herself to be passionate, flirtatious, wide open, a stark contrast to the careful, stoic, grieving Nancy her kids knew in Tucson, the woman who never let herself slip. The truth is, Elena was the version of Nancy that could have existed had fate been kinder. For 30 years, Nancy kept that other woman alive, carving out space for her with stolen weekends, scribbled letters, and a dusty bank account under the name Elena Ramirez. And you're probably wondering, 3 decades? Really? Her own children, Savannah, Annie, Cam, never guessed. It's a lot to swallow. Maybe you're shaking your head right now, thinking it sounds like a betrayal. But before you judge, I want you to really sit with Nancy's reasons. The more you dig, the more it feels less like an act of deception and more like a quiet wound she carried. By 1995, Savannah was chasing her dreams in journalism. Annie had started college. Cam was piecing together his own path. Nancy convinced herself, maybe rightfully, that if they knew about Victor, it'd destroy the image they held of her. Her children were still mourning their father, looking to her for stability, clinging to the idea of the widow who never moved on. Nancy was their anchor. She kept their world from unraveling. They see me as the widow who never moved on. That's their comfort, she confessed to Victor, who asked her again and again to be honest with her family. Nancy couldn't take that away from them. So she protected Elena like a secret garden, kept driving to Santa Fe, kept building her quiet and beautiful hidden world. Under her bed, a locked box slowly overflowed with letters. On the gallery walls, paintings hung signed, Elena Ramirez, a name no one in Tucson would ever see. By 2000, Savannah was working in Washington, D.C., and Annie and Cam had their own families. Nancy finally had a little freedom. Sometimes, she'd stay in Santa Fe for a whole week. Victor's circle saw her as his silent partner, the sharp-eyed woman with an easy smile and quick wit who never lingered too long. Nancy made sure no one connected Elena Ramirez to the mother of a rising TV star. They wouldn't even recognize her. Different hair, thrifted sweaters, cash only, never mentioning Tucson, always watching her back. But nothing stays perfect. Beneath it all, the cracks had started to show. Nancy's health slipped in the 2010s. Pain, heart problems, a pacemaker, they piled up. She got older, the trips got shorter, and carrying 2 lives became heavier. Victor wanted more, wanted all of her. not just weekends snatched away from Tucson. They argued, quietly, almost tenderly, circling the same heartbreak, always coming back together. Their love survived, even as the borders kept closing in. And then Savannah rose higher, joining the Today Show in 2012 and becoming a household name. Nancy beamed, but inside, she was terrified. "She's so exposed," she whispered to Victor. "What if someone digs into me?" Paranoia seeped in. Nancy switched to burner phones, downloaded encrypted apps, hiding her communication in her walker as the pandemic put an abrupt stop to travel. Locked in Tucson, unable to escape, Nancy lived with nothing but her secrets, her regrets, her faith, feeling split in two as she admitted to Victor. When travel reopened, she went to Santa Fe less often. Not because she loved Victor any less, but because the exhaustion of hiding was becoming unbearable. Always afraid she'd slip or someone would catch her. Her last visit, January 15 to the 20th, 2026, just 11 days before she disappeared. Victor saw something different in her that time. She was distracted, scared. She talked about feeling watched back in Tucson. Unusual phone calls, a car tailing her once. Victor blamed her medication, her anxiety, begged her to finally share everything with her family. She refused. Elena belonged to her alone. "They see me as simple Nancy," she said, holding her secret tight. "Elena is mine." She left for home that last time, and 10 days later, she was just gone. The morning the FBI knocked on Victor's door, February 7th, they already had the Santa Fe postmark, already knew enough to tie him to whatever was hidden in those letters. The moment he opened the door, he folded. He didn't try to argue or hide, just spilled out 30 years of secrets right there in his living room. He told them everything: the affair, her pseudonym, the art gallery they ran together, stacks of old letters. He even handed over all the evidence: decades of handwritten love notes, faded photos of trips and stolen afternoons, a little painting Nancy had made once. She called it Hidden Horizons. That title just floors me every time I see it. The FBI agent told me Victor just wept the whole time. "She was my light," he kept saying. "She couldn't leave her kids, so we made something out of what we had." All those years, they'd carved out a secret world between the edges of her regular, heavy life. And now she was gone. But there was more. The agents turned up. Something nobody expected. A $5,000 wire transfer, straight from Nancy's checking account, sent to some anonymous account down in Mexico, just 3 weeks before she disappeared. Victor swore he didn't know a thing about it. He said Nancy had talked about helping an old friend, and that was all. Now investigators think someone may have found out her secret. Maybe a jealous rival in the Santa Fe art scene. Maybe a neighbor back in Tucson who spotted her sneaking off. Maybe someone who decided her story was worth more as blackmail than as gossip. There's something else. This just sends a chill down my back. The locked box she kept beneath her bed, the one stuffed with letters, photographs, all the evidence of her second life. When the FBI searched Nancy's house, that box was missing. Whatever proof she'd kept was swept away before anyone even noticed she was gone. 2 days after Victor's confession, the FBI sat down with Nancy's family. They laid out the whole story. That was the moment everything changed, when the quiet, stony composure Savannah had been balancing finally gave out. Someone close said she just whispered, Mom had a whole other family. Art, a lover. Annie kept flipping through old family snapshots, suddenly seeing their mom's restorative solo trips in a brutal new light. Cam got angry. Why didn't she just tell us? We would have understood. But later, Savannah told a friend something that really stuck with me. It makes sense of her strength, she said, but also her distance. She gave us everything, but she kept this for herself. That'll sit with you, because honestly, that's what this is about. Nancy gave absolutely everything to her family, but Elena, her hidden self, that's what she held back. That was the part that was hers alone. I can't help but think maybe holding on to that gave her the power to make it through those tough, lonely years. Of course, the story blew up online, a feeding frenzy. Nancy had a secret lover, mind blown. People tweeted like it was soap opera, not real heartbreak. Everyone's tossing out new conspiracy theories. blackmail, old flames, an art world grudge. Victor's little gallery is swarmed by reporters, which is almost cruel, considering he's about the gentlest soul in New Mexico. He shut it down for now. She deserved peace, he told a friend. Not this circus. The past few days, I keep circling back to Nancy Guthrie herself. Here's this 84-year-old woman widowed at 47, raising 3 kids alone, carrying all that weight, building a life out of sheer willpower. And somewhere in there, she found a tiny crack in the wall she'd built around herself. Just wide enough to slip through, to breathe, to become someone else for a little while. Someone who painted, who danced, who got to be called Elena by the only person who saw her that way, not as a wife or a mother, but simply herself. Was it wrong to hide all that? No question, it hurt her family. They're living in the fallout right now. But was it also deeply, messily human to need something separate, something just for her, after so much sacrifice? I think so. We all grab onto something when we're starved for ourselves. We have to. The case isn't anywhere near closed. New tips are landing every day. The agents are still chasing down that mystery account in Mexico. They're re-interviewing neighbors, scouring security footage, looking into a man spotted hanging around Nancy's house in the weeks before she vanished. Victor's giving them absolutely everything he can. At this point, all he wants is to bring her back, one way or another. We're still waiting for answers about what happened the night of January 31st. We don't know whether someone blackmailed Nancy or robbed her, or if we're all missing some crucial piece of this puzzle. What I do know is, Nancy Guthrie was never just simple Nancy. She carried multitudes you'd never guess from the outside. A loving mother, a steady bookkeeper, an artist hidden in the margins, a widow who never quite stopped loving, and a woman who kept one little corner of her spirit barricaded off from everyone, so she could keep living on her own terms. That bright, defiant piece of herself, she called it Elena. Wherever Nancy, or Elena, is tonight, I hope she found the freedom she fought so hard for. If you're following this story, drop a comment below. I honestly want to hear what you're thinking. This one has me all twisted up, and if anything breaks, you'll be the first to know. Take care of yourselves out there. Talk soon.